PocaTV, Wenzzzday. Hi, everybody. It's a Wenzzzday Ting, number 36 to be precise. And today I dive into the life, the times, and the works of author and civil rights activist James Baldwin, born 100 years ago. Has the world learned anything from his eloquent and very, very patient explanation of the disparities between Black and white? That's the question. So, James Baldwin, a face that would be very hard to forget. He started talking about these disparities in the 1940s. That's almost 80 years ago. 80 years ago, he started talking about these topics. And yet, when you look at any video of him online, and there are quite a few, so that's your homework. When you look in the comment section beneath those videos, you will find hundreds of comments from people asking the same question. Why is it that we never learned anything about this James Baldwin in our school time? Why is that? So yes, who was this James Baldwin? He was born on August the 2nd of 1924, which is 100 years ago. We will be celebrating all year. He was born in Harlem in New York, and he grew up to be, well, first a preacher man. He started preaching at the age of 14, but you will find out that, well, he skipped that quite soon. He became an author, a thinker, a public speaker, and, as I was saying, a civil rights activist. I did my homework and I found online a nice little bio on James Baldwin, which I cut in two. This is part one.
Novelist, playwright, poet, and essayist, James Baldwin emerged as the spokesman of the civil rights movement.
James Baldwin is considered such a great author because he was so skilled at eloquently describing what it was like to be Black in America.
Born on August 2nd, 1924, in Harlem, New York, James Arthur Baldwin was a Pentecostal preacher at age 14 left the church 3 years later, and was already an accomplished writer. When disgusted by prejudice against African Americans, he left the United States and moved to Paris in 1948.
James Baldwin earned a writing fellowship, and he used that money to buy a ticket and leave immediately for Paris.
He left in part because he felt he couldn't write freely or honestly in America. And perhaps more particularly, he couldn't write freely or honestly from the ghetto.
In Europe, Baldwin completed Go Tell It on the Mountain, one of Modern Library's 100 best English language novels of the 20th century.
Go Tell It on the Mountain was an important novel, in part because there were not many novels being widely read about Black urban life from the perspective of Black people.
The semi-autobiographical tale really discussed in a profound way issues having to deal with family relationships, organized religion, human sexuality. It was certainly one of the finest books published in America.
One of the finest books published in America, go figure, and yet we haven't learned about James Baldwin when we were in school. Quick look in the comment section. I see there is some activity there already. Here is Jaap saying, oh, this is a quote by Baldwin, which some of us know. There are so many ways of being despicable. It quite makes one's head spin. But the way to be really despicable is to be contemptuous of other people's pain. Jaap wishes us a good evening. Same to you, Jaap. Thank you for joining. And I think you started a nice thing there. Anybody else watching? Go look up your favorite quote by James Baldwin. Check that it was really his, not one of those Facebook things that we see, of which we never know if that person really said that. Just, check Goodreads or something, or check verified quotes and come up with some nice quotes by James Baldwin, which we can show here on this platform and share with the rest of the world. So as you heard in that little bio, of which you will be hearing more later on, when James Baldwin arrived in Paris, he completed the book Go Tell It on the Mountain, his first novel, a semi-autobiographical story of one John Grimes, a 1930s teenager living in Harlem. So far, that sounds very much like James Baldwin himself. The book focuses on the role of the Pentecostal church on the lives of African Americans, both as a source of repression and moral hypocrisy, and a source of inspiration and community. So this is a very deep book. It appeared in 1953, and it kind of immediately put James Baldwin on the map. Not only did he write novels, he wrote many essays as well, being in exile in France, as he called it, in Paris. He wrote many, many essays about the plight of the Black man and the Black woman in the United States. And these essays brought him, let's put it this way, respect from journalists in the United States. He became a welcome guest in talk shows, and his essays were readily published. And it was in 1969 that Dick Cavett, a very famous television host in those days, asked him if Black people are optimists now that they are allowed to be a mayor or to become a politician, and that was the summum of acceptance probably, play a role in a television advertisement. And this is what our good friend James Baldwin answered to Dick Cavett.
I don't want to be given anything by you. I just want you to leave me alone so I can do it myself. And it also overlooks another very important thing. Perhaps I don't think that this republic is a summit of human civilization. Perhaps I don't want to become like Ronald Reagan or like the president of General Motors. Perhaps I have another sense of life, which in fact my situation here has forced me to trust. And perhaps I know more about you and your institutions than you know about me. And perhaps I have a judgment on them. Perhaps I don't want what you think I want. And if there's nothing you can give me, perhaps there is something that I can give you.
Mm-hmm. Where do you stand in relation to the Negro figures in the media we see who frighten us the most, and maybe some of you the most, the ones who want to burn it down.
When the Israelis pick up guns, or the Poles, or the Irish, or any white man in the world says, "Give me liberty or give me death," the entire white world applauds. When a black man says exactly the same thing, word for word, he is judged a criminal and treated like one, and everything possible is done to make an example of this bad nigger so there won't be any more like him.
So has anything really changed? Be honest with yourself. Be honest with me. Nothing has. We still live under the pretense that to be able to say something, Black people need some kind of validation from white people, permission even to speak, right? Raise your hand. May I say something? Yes, you may, or no, you may not. Nothing has actually really changed, at least not in my perception. More comments. Here is Donna. Donna Mattis is saying, hi all. Hi, Donna. Welcome to the show. I don't know if you heard it, but Jaap earlier started with a quote by James Baldwin. And I thought, well, maybe you have a favorite quote by James Baldwin. Look it up and send it to me in the comment section. And let's share it with the world. Okay, so looking forward to that, Donna. Maybe you have one already. Maybe you have time to just find one. See what it is that you can do. So here is Baldwin swiftly becoming a force to be reckoned with, speaking his mind. His words get more and more weight in the world, and especially in the 1960s, where we are now in the timeline, in the civil rights movement time. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. led the civil rights movement in the United States, inspired and validated by Baldwin's essays, which he was writing from Europe. How did that go? Here is part 2 of his bio, the little bio that I cut into. Here it is.
Baldwin's book, The Fire Next Time, published in 1963, discussed the uneasy relationship between Christianity and the Black Muslim movement within the civil rights movement, and landed him on the cover of Time magazine.
In 1963, he may well have been the most powerful and most compelling and most widely recognized literary voice in terms of his essays, in terms of his relatively popular fiction. He was the voice that was calling America's attention to the prejudice and the racism that persisted in society.
It was the year of Dr. King's historic speech, the March on Washington. Everybody read The Fire Next Time. It was an angry outcry at the racism going on in the United States and the burgeoning civil rights movement.
With the assassination of major civil rights leaders like Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, Baldwin returned to Europe, where he lived most of his adult life, and continued to reflect the racial upheaval of America through his work.
In addition to novels and essays, James Baldwin was a playwright. He wrote criticism. He even published some film criticism. He was what you might call a creative journalist. He looked into the Atlanta child murders late in his career and wrote a series of powerful essays about those.
As a resident of France, Baldwin was given that country's highest honor, Commander of the Legion of Honor.
So here is this American man who actually self-exiled himself, moved himself away from oppression and repression in the United States, found his way to Paris, and actually became bon ton there in Paris. As you heard just now, he eventually got this Légion d'honneur in France, which is the highest recognition that you can get in France. And they gave this to this Black man. And this is in the middle of the 1960s and 70s that this happened. So that was quite remarkable. So here we see James Baldwin living his very, very best life there in Paris, partying it up, exploring himself, finding out who he was, writing essays, and even, immersing himself in daily life with his cup of coffee there. I think that must be at Père Lachaise cemetery, where many Americans love to hang out, because there's a lot of American writers and artists buried in Père Lachaise cemetery in Paris. So here he is, this debonair Black man living the wonderful life and writing more books. In 1956, he published Giovanni's Room, which is a story about a young American who travels to Spain to be married, but who gets stuck in Paris, where he begins an affair with an Italian man. The book tackles social isolation, gender, and sexual identity crisis, and it zooms in on the notion of masculinity within the story of a bisexual man navigating a society that rejects a core aspect of his own being. So once again, this is mid-50s, and he's writing this book on homosexuality, which in those days and in many places in the world, even today, is something unspeakable, something that cannot be discussed. James Baldwin did show in his other work, outside of the novels, how the church was played a very big role in the denouncing of homosexuality and other gender-related issues. It was the Christian church, he showed us, that actually went around the world deciding that homosexuality was a sin and should be banned everywhere. So that I always find that very interesting myself. So in digging into the life and times of James Baldwin, coming across this, that kind of validated my own thinking on the topic, which is always a great thing. Well, who am I seeing here? Donna is still writing. She's still writing a comment. She pressed enter without finishing what she had to say. So yes, Giovanni's Room was that book, and that's caused quite a stir, as you might imagine. And anybody who has ever tried to explain to the masses how exclusion works knows that nobody in power really actually cares. They don't care whether or not you feel excluded. They don't care about excluding. They are doing the excluding. So the same question gets asked of Black people today as were asked in those days to James Baldwin. Let me give you an example. We're talking so many decades ago, and yet it's the same question. Harvard philosophy professor Paul Weiss, he demanded to know why it is that James Baldwin was always being so difficult and sticking to the same topic when there were other ways to talk to each other, is what Professor Weiss said.
I have more in common with a black scholar than I have with a white man who's against scholarship. And you have more in common with a white author than you have with someone who's against all literature. So why must we always concentrate on color or on religion or this? There are other ways of connecting men.
I'll tell you this. When I left this country in 1948, I left this country for one reason only, one reason. I didn't care where I went. I might have gone to Hong Kong, I might have gone to Timbuktu. I ended up in Paris, on the streets of Paris, with $40 in my pocket on the theory that nothing worse could happen to me there than had already happened to me here. You talk about making it as a writer by yourself. You had to be able then to turn off all the antenna with which you live, because once you turn your back on this society, you may die. You may die. And it's very hard to sit at a typewriter and concentrate on that if you're afraid of the world around you. The years I lived in Paris did one thing for me. They released me from that particular social terror, which was not the paranoia of my own mind, but a real social danger visible in the face of every cop, every boss, everybody. I don't know what most white people in this country feel, but I can only conclude what they feel from the state of their institutions. I don't know whether the labor unions and their bosses really hate me. That doesn't matter, but I know I'm not in their unions. I don't know if the real estate lobby is anything against black people, but I know the real estate lobbies keep me in the ghetto. I don't know if the Board of Education hates black people, but I know the textbooks they give my children to read and the schools that we have to go to. Now, this is the evidence. You want me to make an act of faith, risking myself, my wife, my woman, my sister, my children, on some idealism which you assure me exists in America, which I have never seen.
The question still gets asked today. And I wonder, people saying they want to know about this, but then when you talk about it, they say, can you not talk about it? That's actually what's been happening for all these decades now. We're talking 8 decades that the same things have been happening. And that at least is something remarkable, may I say so? see what you have to say in the comments. Here is Donna. Let me see what she says. She says, it comes as a great shock to see Gary Cooper killing off the Indians. And although you are rooting for Gary Cooper, that the Indians are you. So Donna finds that quote by James Baldwin very profound. So do I. It's the story of white supremacist manipulation. And she continues to say her most memorable Baldwin quote, it is, because it remains so very relevant, and how easily we fall into the subliminal messages. Right you are, Donna, exactly. I noticed that Rosalind is joining us as well, saying good evening. Hi, Ros. We're doing a little thing here today, this program on James Baldwin. And Jaap started out with a quote by James Baldwin. And then I asked the viewers, if you have a quote by James Baldwin that you would like to share it with us here right in the comments, and we'll pull it up on screen and share it with the entire world. I think that's a nice thing to do. So where am I in the show? You just heard the professor demanding of Baldwin not to be so difficult, and to approach him when speaking on another level, the level of thinkers and the level of doers, and not the level of white and black. So yes, Professor Weiss was kind of ticked off by James Baldwin. But of course, he was not the only opinion. Many people did fall completely for this man. And once again, I have to comment on the face. I mean, look at the depth in the eyes. Look at the suffering that we see. Look at the original thought that you can see coming through his eyes. I believe that's why I say it's a very difficult face to forget. And this face inspired many people, many artists to this day. I'm just going to show you a few pieces of artwork that I found that, had James Baldwin as a subject. This piece of artwork by Kate Boxer, in which we see the cigarette without he was never. I mean, I have my bad ways when it comes to inhaling and exhaling, let's put it that way. But James Baldwin really never, ever was without a cigarette. So a lovely artwork by Kate Boxer. Here's another one, more recent, I believe, made by Samoa. I do believe that's made on the computer, but it's still the same cigarette that we're seeing, and it's a very colorful background. So here we see James Baldwin, who looks a little less like James Baldwin than the other piece of artwork, but we still know it's him. And then we have this piece by Sabrina Nelson, which I find very, very similar to the real face. And what do I have here? No, that's coming up later. So let's take this down and keep talking to you about what else is coming up. So Baldwin himself, he had no time for this kind of vanity. He did not pose for those pieces of artwork. People worked on them from pictures that we have online. Instead, he becomes more and more intent on bringing his message across. And he becomes more and more explicit in how he says things, calling every spade a spade, not mincing words, just basically telling it like it is. Here are his views on why racism towards Black people is actually the problem of the white people putting that racism in place in the first place. Fascinating stuff.
A Negro can learn to live with the fact he has kinky hair and dark skin. That's not the problem. The problem is that white people can't live with that. And what is involved here is not the fact of the kinky hair or the dark skin, but what white Americans take this to be. The fact that Negroes are in the ghetto or the Negroes are oppressed is not so terrifying as is the fact the white Americans who do this every day don't want to know they're doing it. Segregation means that you can penalize a man for being born Black, and then you can pretend you did not do it because you built the wall so high that you never see the life he lives. And when he tries to report it to you, you think that he is making it up. It is far beyond the Negro problem It is something to do with what you think life is, what you think human experience is all about. And in a way, I think the Negro has functioned in this country for a long, long time as the wall between white Americans and tragedy, white Americans and sex, white Americans and suffering, white Americans and death. And all the things of which the Negro is accused in the minds and hearts of most white Americans are the things that most white Americans are afraid to deal with in themselves.
So what are your thoughts on that? Let me know in the comment section. So what Baldwin actually says is the whole racism isn't about the black people. It's about the white people feeling inferior, feeling inadequate, feeling scared, feeling disappointed, feeling a whole bunch of things. And instead of dealing with those things, they blame it all on black people. I really want to know what it is you think about that, my lovely people. I am waiting for your comments in the comment section. And even if you are in a rush to tell me, you can even join me here online. I did not make a QR code today. I had no time. But you can head over to this URL, whether it's on your small device or on your laptop. It is case sensitive. If you type that in, you can come on screen with me and you can discuss with me that latest quote that we just showed by James Baldwin, saying the whole racism thing isn't about putting down black people. It's about not dealing with the problems that white people have, them dealing with those problems themselves. Let me know how you feel about that. If you want to come online with me in the show, you can head over to that URL. And if not, you can just send it to me in the comment section on YouTube and on Facebook. And while you're there, I must always say, I am heading towards 1,000 subscribers, and I would really like to have that happen. I'm over 900 now. And this is with long conversations on long topics and long specials like this one. So I'm kind of chuffed, and I really want that 1,000 to happen. Help me out there, make this grow. If it is true what you say, that there is a market for this kind of program because you enjoy watching it, hit that subscribe button or the like button on Facebook and make this marketplace grow, this so-called niche that people still want to visit. Apparently, otherwise there would not be over 900 subscribers. Help me out, people. It's 1,000 that we want. So our good friend continues to write, and he wrote the book If Beale Street Could Talk. That was in 1974. Yet again, it's a social commentary, really. It's the love story about a sales clerk, Tish, and a sculptor, Funny, who have known each other from childhood, and they finally fall in love in their late teens and they get married. However, their lives are derailed in the late 1960s and early 1970s when a corrupt policeman frames Funny for rape. Yet again, a topic that we can read about every single day in any newspaper in the West. So yet again, I have to say, nothing of what we say we learned from James Baldwin has actually gelled with us, because we keep perpetuating the same things and we keep on doing the same stuff. Yes, it is still, I have friends who were framed by corrupt policemen, and newspapers were writing about how they were terrorists and how they were trying to incite some revolution, all of which was not true. But this has happened not so very long ago in the Netherlands. So yes, we hold these things to be true. If Beale Street Could Talk, a wonderfully beautiful book. Very sad, as most of his work. At least I think it is quite sad to read. So yes, he did that. And where am I now? I am here. Much later, long after his death, a film came out called I Am Not Your Negro. I showed a clip from it earlier in this program. It was the film is based on Baldwin's unfinished manuscript called Remember This House. It is the history of racism in the United States through his own recollections of civil rights leaders such as Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, and MLK. And it also includes Baldwin's personal observations on American history. The film did really well in some parts of the world, but I do remember going to see it here, right here in the Netherlands. And I was one of 3 people in the audience watching that fantastic film. And yes, it was an afternoon session, but still not so very long after that. The Barbie movie came along, and there were afternoon sessions of the Barbie movie, and the queues were. Oops, sorry about that. That's my microphone. That was my microphone falling. Are you still with me, people? Let me try to remedy this. I was getting a little heated. I was telling you about Barbie movie and queues all around the block even to see that film. So why is it that we can see daylight films when they are Barbie, and we say that we are very interested in the disparities between black and white, yet we don't go and see the movie made about James Baldwin? Let's see what people have to say. Here is Adrienne saying, if you have to oppress someone else in order to establish your own sense of worth, it can only come from an innate sense of inferiority. And that is, I guess, linking back to the quote of James Baldwin earlier, in which he said, it's really not about putting down black people. It's about feeling better about yourself as a white person and dealing with your fears by blaming somebody else. And Donna says, it's her sentiments exactly. She's also always felt that white supremacy is foundational in white inferiority and insecurity, the need to denigrate, to dehumanize, to racialize, so that the white man's light can shine. We are all in full agreement. And yet I'm telling you, when the movie came out, I was one of 3 people in the whole cinema watching this documentary film of James Baldwin, mostly in his own words. So that was kind of interesting if you are interested in this topic. So yes, the questions have to be asked. Quite a few questions have to be asked, actually. What are we to think of those Western intellectuals, and I mean the white ones, who put Baldwin on a pedestal, and if a film of him comes about, they don't go to see it? What are we supposed to think of that? Another question is, how can it be that it has been decades since James Baldwin so very eloquently and extremely patiently and sometimes a little bluntly explained to us time and time and time and time again what racism is and how it works, followed by countless other people in the years after him, and that it still all seems to be a huge mystery to white people? That's a question I'd like to know. Yeah, it's been decades that we've been talking about this, and yet I find people every single day saying, I didn't know. How can I find information? And please educate me, as if there is no such thing as an internet in which you can type in James Baldwin and come across everything I am showing you today and so much more. Do your work, people. Do your work. And the third question I would like to ask today is, why is it that people on the European side of the Atlantic, I mean this side of the Atlantic, keep saying that racism is not a thing here? It's something that's in America, on the other side of the pond. We have no such thing in Europe. Well, specifically to those people, and more targetedly towards the interviewer saying that same nonsense, James Baldwin had the answer. And you know me by now. I am going to show that answer.
America comes out of Europe. I was born in Harlem. You have a Harlem here. You have a Brooklyn Bridge here. And you cannot pretend that what is happening on the other side of the water where you sent your children.
And New York was New Amsterdam.
When New York was New Amsterdam.
But is
you are still connected, yes.
Do you think now, when we have discovered in Amsterdam that we have a minority problem, that we are doing the same thing?
You are doing exactly the same thing. And what you are unable to accept is this. You always call it a minority problem. And it's true that black or non-white people are minority in any European capital. But we are not a minority in the world. You are the minority. And that's what you cannot face. All you really have, after all, are space shuttles, banks, and weapons. What you don't have anymore is me. And you only, me, I, the slave, I, the nigger, I, the black cat, who believed everything you said once.
If you see my exasperation, you must know that, I too am getting a little tired of these innocent questions. Let me see. Adrienne had something to say about this specific comportment. She says, white people are profoundly afraid of introspection. Yes, they are. And why is that? Is it because, as I saw in another clip by James Baldwin, they know deep down. They know deep down and they feel bad about it, but they just don't know how to deal with feeling bad about themselves. What does Donna say? She says, and aside, oh, it's stormy weather there in Jamaica. Rain is heavy. She can hardly hear me. Oh, I hope you can catch it still in the rerun. Put on your earphones if you have any, Donna Mattis. And I hope the rain soon passes. We need rain, but we don't need so much rain as we've been getting in Jamaica, that other part of my life. So, yeah, the introspection bit is what it boils down to. If you, as a white person, ask me to do the homework for you, yet again, you're letting me do your dirty work. Do you not realize that? Why is it so hard for you to say to yourselves, I feel bad about the stuff I'm hearing today or the stuff I read today? Why can't you just admit to yourself that you feel bad about it and you are looking for a way to feel better by doing better? I'm not saying every white person has this problem, but I do think many do. I recently was a chief editor in chief, guest editor in chief of a glossy magazine here in the Netherlands, all about a seafaring hero here in the Netherlands. And I was asked by the people where his of the church where his grave is to do this work and to talk with them about the notion of heroism and whether or not this specific person should still be considered a hero. And here was this white lady, a lovely person, really trying to learn, feeling very uncomfortable and asking me this kind of questions. And when I told her, it is for you to find out how you feel about this and what you think should be done. And I even helped her by saying, I believe and I do. I don't think there's anything wrong with calling those seafaring heroes within their time space, because what they did was in a way heroic. They didn't know the world. They got on a boat and they went and did stuff, and they did it all in the name of the king and their country. Within that time bracket, I can imagine people being proud of that. What we need to do is redefine that notion of heroism and put in a little plaque when we put up his face somewhere saying, yes, in those years he was a hero. Nowadays we see that differently because he also had slave ships or whatever else seafaring heroes did in those years. They were all over the world, especially the Dutch. They were all over the world, and none of what they did was nice. So at one point, we need to just say to ourselves, black and white people and everybody in between, we need to say to ourselves, these things have happened. And then we need to stop being surprised and being hurt and being tearful, but just do something about it. The first thing being recognizing our own role in it. So yes, there is so much more to read and to watch about the life and works of James Baldwin. And I actually urge you to do so. It has been 100 years since he was born, and yet his work seems so more relevant now than it ever was. Hold on, let me see I think my microphone was a bit loud. I hope you're still hearing me. Yeah, so his work now is more relevant maybe than it ever was. And as far as I'm concerned, it is compulsory learning. Compulsory learning to anybody claiming that they are invested in changing the narrative and that they are invested in changing the power structures in this world. Put your money where your mouth is, people. put your ears and your eyes there where you can see the matters that will corroborate your claim to betterment of this world, that will help support you in your plight to understand all these disparities. Don't just say that you want to understand it, just do the work. It really isn't very hard. I do it all the time. I do it. Nobody pays me for this. I do it and I share it with you because I think it's that important. Just do it. You will definitely learn a thing or two. And as far as I know, learning a thing or two has never been a bad thing. So I guess that's it for today. The next PocaTV Wenzzzday Ting will be next Wednesday on September the 11th at the same time. I have no idea what I'll be talking about. Maybe I'll do a funny news story, to lure in the viewers, to lure in those subscriptions and those likes and those shares. Maybe something about baby burping contests, or I don't know, cats gone wild. They always seem to attract a lot of viewers. I might just do that. And in the meantime, I still want to ask you to make it a date with me, whatever the topic may be. And for now, like this video. If you feel so inclined, please share it in your own network and hit that subscribe button on YouTube and the like button on Facebook. Help PocaTV reach that landmark of 1,000 followers. And I'm heading in the right direction, as I was telling you, with over 900 people following my little channel on YouTube right now. There is a market. I keep saying it. Help it to grow. Well, people, that is it for today. Another quick thing. What does Yitske tell me? Yitske is joining in late. I hope you saw the rest of the program. She says James Baldwin gets under your skin. Oh, yes, he does. It's those eyes. It's that voice. It's the truth of what he speaks. Yitske recently read 3 books by him. Excellent. And it's ongoing relevance, like I was saying. Thank you for joining again, Yitske. I'm happy to have you as a new regular here on PocaTV. Wonderful stuff. So yeah, that's it for today. I am going to tell you, I'll be seeing you next week, or you will be seeing me. In the meantime, have a good one and stay safe, whatever it is you do. Bye, everybody. See you next time. Bye. PocaTV Wenzzzday.